Kale ran through the bustling corridors of the space station, his boots clanging softly against the metal floor. Sparks flew from damaged panels, and the air smelled of burnt circuits and ozone. He had only minutes to reach the central hub before the next wave of explosions. Alarms blared, red lights flickered across the walls, and the distant rumble of collapsing structures reminded him that the station was falling apart around him. Kale's heart pounded, but he didn't stop. There was no time to think of himself. He had a duty. Kale had come to this station on a routine mission, repairing energy conduits and monitoring life support systems. Humans rarely ventured this far into alien space, but he had been assigned as part of a diplomatic support team, tasked with helping the alien royal delegation maintain their station's infrastructure. He wasn't a soldier or a hero. At least he hadn't thought he was. But now, the chaos around him demanded courage he didn't know he had. He rounded a corner and froze. Ahead, a large crowd had gathered near the central command room. Screams and shouts echoed through the corridor. Security droids were attempting to hold back panic-stricken civilians, but the crowd surged forward, spilling into every side passage. At the center, he saw her, Princess Lyra. She stood tall despite the chaos, her silvery blue uniform glowing faintly under the emergency lights. Even in the midst of disaster, she radiated a calm authority. Her large, violet eyes scanned the crowd, and her hands gestured commands with precision. Kale's stomach twisted. He could see the fear in the princess's eyes now, a rare glimpse beneath the regal composure. And behind her, looming like a shadow, was the source of the next explosion, a massive bomb planted near the energy core. He could see the timer ticking down. Only seconds remained. "Move back!" someone shouted, but the voice was drowned out by the approaching alarm. Kale didn't think. He sprinted toward the princess, weaving through panicked civilians. The heat from the bomb's imminent detonation made his skin prickle. He reached her just as the blast wave began to ripple through the corridor. Instinctively, Kale grabbed Lyra and threw himself on top of her. The explosion hit, a roaring fireball of light and sound, and he felt the full force knock him to the floor. Pain shot through his arms and back, but he clutched the princess tightly, shielding her with his body. Debris rained down, striking metal walls and shattering panels. For a moment, time slowed. Kale could feel every shard, every vibration, every heartbeat. The world had become a storm of noise and chaos, yet the princess remained unhurt beneath him. When the light and sound subsided, Kale's vision blurred. He could hear his own ragged breathing over the distant alarms. The corridor was a ruin, walls cracked and smoke curling into the air. People were running, shouting, and calling for help. Somewhere in the chaos, he could hear the whirring of security droids assessing the damage. But he didn't move. He stayed on the floor, keeping Lyra close. She looked at him, her expression a mix of surprise and gratitude, and nodded ever so slightly. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice steady despite the panic around them. "I think so," Kale replied, coughing as he pushed himself up. Pain lanced through his ribs, but he ignored it. "You're safe, that's what matters." "Just lucky," he muttered, but deep down he knew it wasn't luck. He had acted. He had made a choice when everyone else hesitated. And that choice had saved a life, and maybe more than that. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Another explosion rocked the station, this one further down the corridor. Dust and debris fell like rain. Kale knew they couldn't stay here. They had to move, find safety. "Follow me," Kale shouted, helping the princess to her feet. She trusted him without hesitation, falling into step beside him. He led her through a maze of broken corridors, ducking under twisted metal beams and leaping over holes that revealed the station's fiery underbelly. Smoke burned his throat, and the heat made him sweat, but he didn't stop. One thought guided him: keep her alive. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a collapsed wall. Beyond it, the main evacuation routes were blocked. Kale's mind raced. He spotted a maintenance shaft running along the side wall, barely large enough for two people. Without hesitation, he pushed the princess forward. "This way," he said. They crawled through the narrow tunnel, the metal walls scraping their shoulders, until they emerged in a small service bay. The room was relatively intact, but alarms still blared and emergency lights flashed red. Kale collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. Lyra remained standing, her gaze fixed on the damage reports flashing across the holographic console. "You did well back there," she said quietly. "Most would have frozen." Kale grabbed the princess and dove to the floor again, shielding her as debris fell around them. The world became a storm of fire, smoke, and metal. Kale's ears rang, his vision blurred, but he didn't let go. He couldn't let go. When the tremors subsided, Kale opened his eyes to see Lyra safe, her eyes wide but uninjured. For a brief moment, they just stared at each other, breathing heavily, the chaos outside the bay momentarily forgotten. "Kale," Lyra said, her voice trembling slightly. "I thank you, truly." "Just a few scratches," he lied, trying to sound casual. In truth, every muscle ached, and he could feel bruises forming along his arms and back. But he didn't complain, not when she was alive. The room shook again, this time less violently. Kale realized the station was stabilizing, at least for the moment. But the danger was far from over. He needed to get the princess to a secure location before the next wave of attacks. He helped her to her feet, and together they moved toward the emergency lift that would take them to the upper levels. Along the way, Kale noticed the other survivors, engineers, security personnel, and civilians, all helping each other despite the fear in their eyes. It was a small spark of hope in the middle of destruction. As they reached the lift, Kale pressed the call button. The doors hissed open, revealing a group of security droids standing at attention. Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding even the mechanical guardians. They allowed her to pass, and Kale followed close behind. The lift ascended slowly, giving Kale a view of the station's damage. Fires burned across several sectors, and thick smoke obscured parts of the command hub. He could see emergency shuttles preparing for evacuation, their engines glowing like stars in the darkness. The scale of the disaster struck him, but he pushed the fear aside. One step at a time, one decision at a time. When the lift reached the upper level, Kale and Lyra emerged into a spacious observation deck. The view of the galaxy beyond the station was breathtaking, even amidst the destruction. Stars shimmered in the darkness, distant planets glowing faintly. Kale had never felt so small and yet so significant at the same time. Lyra turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Kale, you didn't have to risk yourself," she said softly. "I did," he replied simply. "It wasn't a choice, really. Someone had to act. I'm just a human trying to survive." As alarms continued to ring and the station's structural integrity warning flashed red, Kale knew that this was only the beginning. More challenges awaited, more dangers, and more decisions that could change the course of lives, and maybe even the galaxy. But for now, he allowed himself a moment to breathe, to stand beside the princess he had saved, and to understand that courage sometimes comes from simply refusing to step back. And in that moment, Kale knew that whatever came next, he would face it. Not as an ordinary human, but as someone who had already proven he could stand in the face of unimaginable danger and protect what mattered most. Kale opened his eyes to a brightness he had never seen before. The room was spacious, larger than any quarters he had ever entered. Soft golden light bathed the walls, and delicate patterns shimmered faintly across the polished floor. The air smelled faintly of flowers, something unfamiliar but strangely calming. For a moment he thought he might still be dreaming, caught somewhere between the chaos of the station and the warmth of this place. He tried to move, but his muscles protested. Every step, every motion reminded him of the weight he had carried, the explosion he had survived. Pain lanced across his back and arms, but it was manageable. What surprised him most was the soft humming of voices around him, calm and respectful, unlike the screaming and alarms of the station he had just fled. A door slid open silently, and a figure entered. She wore a flowing robe of deep violet, embroidered with silver threads that caught the light. Her expression was serene, her eyes sharp and intelligent. Kale blinked, realizing she was one of the attendants he had seen in the royal court during his brief glimpses of Princess Lyra. "You are awake," she said gently. Her voice had a musical quality, and Kale found himself instinctively respecting her presence. "The princess requested you be brought here. She has been concerned about your condition." "I thank you," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm fine, really." The station's destruction and chaos were behind him, replaced by calm and order. He realized that he had not just survived the explosion, he had been brought here for a reason he could not yet understand. The door opened again, this time revealing Princess Lyra herself. She moved with grace, every step deliberate, her violet eyes scanning him carefully. Kale instinctively stood, though his body ached. "You're awake," she said softly. There was no fear in her voice now, only relief and something that reminded him of respect. "How are you feeling?" "You saved my life, Kale. That cannot go unnoticed. The explosion you shielded me from was not random. It was meant to disrupt a treaty, a plan that has kept peace across multiple systems for decades. Your bravery has not only saved me, but also countless lives. For that, the Council has requested your presence. Follow me and you will see." They passed through rooms filled with alien technology Kale had never imagined, floating holographic displays, devices that adjusted temperature and pressure automatically, and panels that responded to touch without buttons or levers. Finally, they entered a vast chamber. The ceiling soared high above, and in the center, a circle of figures sat upon raised platforms. Each figure wore robes or armor that marked their status, and Kale immediately noticed the mix of species present. Some were tall and slender with translucent skin, others short and broad with armored hides, and a few had wings folded elegantly against their backs. Kale realized that this was a council representing multiple civilizations, an assembly of leaders and advisors from across the galaxy. All eyes turned to him. He froze, suddenly aware of the weight of the room, of the significance of their attention. Whispers rippled through the chamber, a language Kale could not understand, yet the tone carried a mixture of curiosity and respect. Lyra stepped forward. "Council members, this is Kale. He is human, and he has acted with bravery that is rare in any species. He shielded me from an explosion intended to disrupt the peace we have worked so hard to maintain." Why would a human do such a thing? Another member, a creature with 4 arms and a calm, deep voice, leaned forward. "Your species is young, still learning the ways of the galaxy, yet your actions show wisdom beyond your years. We must understand this, human courage better." He looked at Lyra, who nodded slightly, reassuring him. "You will rest here," she said. "The council wishes to know more about you, but that can wait until you regain your strength. For now, you have earned our trust, and that is rare for someone from outside our worlds." As he was guided to a chamber to rest, he thought about the station, the chaos, and the choices he had made. Nothing in his life had prepared him for this moment, yet somehow he had risen to it. Somehow he had made a difference. In his quarters, Kale sat on a soft, cushioned platform, marveling at the simple elegance of the room. The walls shifted gently, displaying calming images of forests, oceans, and distant planets. He realized that the alien species he had encountered were not only advanced in technology, but also in understanding, in creating spaces that nurtured rather than merely functioned. Lyra entered the room once more, carrying a small tray with food and water. She set it down in front of him. "Eat," she said. "You will need your strength. The council will meet again soon, and you must be prepared to speak if you are to be part of what comes next." Not many humans would act without hesitation, without thought for themselves. You have shown qualities we value highly: courage, loyalty, and quick thinking. These are traits that can change the course of history. Yet her words made him realize that actions, no matter how small they seemed to oneself, could carry immense weight in the lives of others. "I don't feel special," he said quietly. "I just did what I thought I had to do." "You have reminded us that humans, though few and underestimated, can shape destinies." He reflected on the events of the day, the explosion, the chaos, the fear, and the choices he had made. Each memory reinforced a truth he could no longer deny. He was not merely surviving. He was part of something greater, a story unfolding on a scale he had never imagined. When he finally emerged from his quarters, he was guided back to the council chamber. The atmosphere had changed. The council members no longer regarded him with curiosity but with respect, acknowledging his presence as one of significance. Lyra stood beside him, her calm authority a beacon in the room. "You will help us understand the human perspective," she said to the council. "We must learn from those who act with courage and wisdom, even when they are far from home. Kale will provide insight that we cannot ignore." Now he would continue to rise to the challenges ahead. As he prepared to address the council, Kale realized something profound. Humans were often underestimated, dismissed as weak or insignificant. But here, among the stars, he saw the truth. Courage, ingenuity, and loyalty were qualities that transcended species. And in him, at least, the galaxy had seen the potential of humanity. The doors to the chamber opened, and Kale stepped forward, ready to speak, ready to prove that even a single human could make a difference. And in that moment, he knew that his journey was only beginning. Kale walked carefully into the council chamber, feeling the weight of every gaze upon him. The room was quieter than before, the air thick with expectation. He could see the council members seated in their semicircle, their postures formal, expressions neutral but attentive. They were here to judge, to learn, and perhaps to decide if a human could truly contribute to matters far beyond his homeworld. Lyra guided him to a small platform near the center. "Kale," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "these are the leaders of several civilizations. They wish to understand not only what you did, but how you think. Your insights as a human may offer solutions they have not considered. But now, standing among beings from across the galaxy, he felt a new kind of pressure, a mental weight that required more than courage. It demanded clarity, reasoning, and confidence. The tall figure with glowing green eyes spoke first. Human, your species is small and often underestimated. Why should we trust your judgment in matters of strategy or diplomacy? Because we think differently, he said. Humans are flexible. We can adapt to unexpected situations, make choices when others hesitate, and find solutions others might overlook. My actions today prove that even one person can make a difference if they act wisely and quickly. Kale knew that words alone would not suffice. He needed to demonstrate to show the value of human ingenuity in practice. Lyra stepped forward. Kale has already proven his courage. Now we will see how he handles complex problems. We have set up a simulation of a potential attack scenario. Kale will advise on the defense strategies, using his perspective as a human engineer and problem solver. Kale studied the display carefully. His eyes moved quickly across the map, calculating distances, speeds, and possible outcomes. First, he said, pointing at one cluster of red markers near a critical supply route, we need to secure this area. If the enemy reaches these points, they can cut off reinforcements and supplies. We should deploy drones to create barriers and decoy ships to mislead them. Meanwhile, we can position our main fleet to strike when they are distracted, giving us an advantage. That same thinking can apply here. Predictable strategies can be exploited. Flexibility and quick thinking save lives. His ideas were being heard, considered seriously, and respected. It was a rare feeling for him, one that filled him with both pride and responsibility. Next, Kale continued, pointing to another section of the holographic map, we need to reinforce communication lines. In the last attack, chaos spread because information was delayed. If we establish multiple secure channels, using both conventional and encrypted signals, we can coordinate defenses more effectively. Human ingenuity lies in redundancy, always having backup plans. He spoke simply, avoiding complex jargon, focusing instead on logic, practicality, and adaptability. His words carried weight because they were grounded in experience and clear reasoning. After nearly an hour of discussion, the simulation ended. The council members whispered among themselves, clearly impressed. One of the more skeptical leaders, a broad creature with armored scales, finally spoke. Human, your suggestions show both creativity and practicality. Your species may be small, but your mind is sharp. We underestimated you. Not anyone would have acted as you did. That is why you are here, Kale. We must learn from those who see the world differently. They respected you not just for your courage, but for your mind. That is rare. But combined with intelligence, it shapes destinies. Over the next few days, Kale was introduced to the inner workings of the royal fleet. He learned to operate alien consoles, understand starship mechanics, and coordinate small teams during simulations. Each lesson reinforced a truth he already knew. Humans were adaptable. While other species relied on technology or tradition, humans relied on flexibility, on thinking creatively in the moment, on using whatever was available to solve problems. One day, during a strategy session, a council member questioned Kale's recommendation to place a small squad of ships in a seemingly vulnerable position near the enemy's path. Human, why risk so little for so much? The leader asked. It seems dangerous. Risk, calculated wisely, can create opportunities that brute force never could. He was no longer just an outsider. He was a contributor, a thinker whose perspective mattered. In quieter moments, Kale would wander the corridors of the flagship, observing the alien crew, studying their technology and learning their customs. He marveled at their precision, their rituals, and the way they coordinated seamlessly. Yet he also noticed their rigidity, the ways in which tradition sometimes limited innovation. That was where humans excelled. While he lacked their history and experience, he brought a fresh perspective, unbound by expectation, capable of finding solutions others overlooked. One evening, Lyra found him on the observation deck, staring at the stars. You seem thoughtful, she said. Kale turned. I've been thinking about what you said, about courage and intelligence shaping destinies. Humans are often underestimated, even by themselves. But I see now that even one person, if willing to act, can influence events on a massive scale. These are rare among even the oldest civilizations. But I believe humans can rise to meet it. He grew more confident with each passing day, his reputation among the council solidifying. And yet, Cale never forgot why he was here. It had started with a single act of protection, a decision to shield Princess Lyra from an explosion. That choice had brought him into the heart of galactic diplomacy and strategy. It had shown him that humans, though underestimated, could influence events far beyond their homeworld. By the time he was called to address the council again, Cale had transformed in his own eyes. He was no longer just a human engineer. He was a strategist, a problem solver, a representative of a species that had proven its worth in courage and intelligence. He stood confidently before the assembly, ready to offer ideas, solutions, and insight. And in that moment, he realized the truth he had discovered over the past days. Heroism alone is not enough. Intelligence, adaptability, and courage together can change the course of history. And Cale, a single human among countless aliens, was living proof. The calm that had settled over the flagship vanished suddenly. Alarms blared, red lights flashing violently as the ship shuddered from the impact of external attacks. Cale had been monitoring simulations, training exercises, and planning strategies for days, but this was real. The rogue faction that had tried to destroy the station was back, stronger and more organized. Their fleet had appeared almost out of nowhere, striking at the outer defenses of the royal convoy. Cale stood beside Lyra on the command deck, his hands gripping the console as he tried to process the scale of the assault. The enemy ships were fast, heavily armed, and coordinated in a way that suggested intelligence and experience. Yet Cale felt no fear. The days of preparation, the council's lessons, and his own experiences had sharpened his mind. He was ready to act. "We're under heavy attack," Lyra said calmly, though her eyes scanned the holographic display, noting the position of every ship. "Cale, I need you to advise. We cannot rely on brute force alone." "Do it." A council member beside Cale, a tall being with silver-tinted skin, leaned closer. "Human, your tactics are unconventional yet effective. This is unlike anything our fleets have tried." Humans survive by thinking ahead, improvising, and using creativity in battle. At the same time, we send fighter squadrons through the gaps the drones created. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and retreat before they can recover. Cale's mind moved quickly, anticipating enemy maneuvers, adjusting defenses, and giving precise instructions to pilots and crew. He directed drones to act as both shield and distraction, mapped safe escape routes for civilian transports, and calculated the optimal angles for counterattacks. The first wave of fighters moved in, striking the enemy's flanks. Cale had predicted their response, and the enemy ships had fallen right into the traps set by decoys and calculated positioning. Explosions lit up the holographic map as rogue vessels were disabled or forced to retreat. The council members observed quietly, some whispering to one another. The skepticism from earlier days had vanished. They were witnessing human ingenuity in action, calculated, bold, and decisive. Cale was not just surviving, he was leading, guiding, and protecting. "Cale, your idea of splitting their forces worked," Lyra said, her voice calm yet edged with relief. "The rogue fleet is faltering. We need to anticipate their next move and stay adaptable. They won't maneuver well there, and it gives our fleet an advantage." Amidst the controlled chaos, Cale noticed one rogue ship breaking formation and heading straight for the flagship's core reactor. Panic flared in the crew for a brief moment, but Cale's mind was already working. "Send an interceptor squadron after that ship. At the same time, I'll divert auxiliary power to the reactor shields. We cannot let it be hit." The command deck erupted in quiet applause and murmurs of approval. Cale's face remained steady, though his heart raced. Every second had been a calculation, every choice critical, and the lives of hundreds of beings, human, alien, and royal, rested on his decisions. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are extraordinary, Cale. Your mind, your courage. It saved countless lives today. The Council will remember this." He coordinated with Lyra, sending small, highly mobile squadrons to flank and distract, while the main fleet prepared a coordinated strike. Explosions lit up the holographic map as enemy ships were destroyed one by one. The rogue faction, unprepared for such flexible and unpredictable tactics, began to retreat. The flagship had taken some damage, but it remained operational. Cale's strategies had minimized casualties and protected the princess and the council. The crew cheered quietly, relief and admiration evident in their eyes. Even the council members who had once doubted him now regarded him with respect and awe. When the battle finally subsided, Kale leaned against a console, his body exhausted but his mind alert. Lyra stood beside him, her expression one of admiration and gratitude. "You have done more than I imagined, Kale. You have shown that one human, armed with intelligence and courage, can change the course of an entire battle." "We succeeded together." One of the leaders, the armored scaled being, spoke. "Kale, your strategies and leadership have saved lives and secured our fleet. We underestimated your species, and for that, we apologize. Your actions today will be remembered across our civilizations." Humanity, long underestimated, had earned respect through his actions. A single human had altered the outcome of a battle that could have escalated into a catastrophic war. Over the following hours, Kale worked tirelessly with the Council and Lyra to repair damage, reassess defensive strategies, and ensure that no threat remained. He coordinated teams, optimized resource allocation, and implemented new safeguards. Every decision, every calculation reinforced the truth he had always known. Humans thrived in situations that demanded adaptability, ingenuity, and courage. By the end of the day, the rogue faction had retreated, their fleet weakened and disorganized. The flagship remained intact, the princess safe, and the council impressed beyond measure. Kale finally allowed himself to sit, exhausted but exhilarated. Lyra joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Today, Kale, you have not only protected me but also shown the galaxy what humans are capable of. You have earned a place of respect, not because of title or rank, but because of your mind and your courage. That is the essence of humanity." Now he understood that even a single human could shape the destiny of worlds, influence the outcome of wars, and earn respect among civilizations far older and more advanced than his own. And in that quiet moment, Kale realized that the future held challenges far greater than any battle he had faced today. Yet he felt ready. Humans had always thrived against the odds, and he, as one of their representatives, would continue to prove that courage, ingenuity, and intelligence could change the course of history. He looked at Lyra, standing tall beside him, and knew that together they would face whatever the galaxy threw at them. For Kale, this was not just survival. It was the beginning of a new chapter for humanity, one in which even a single human could rise to greatness among the stars. The aftermath of the battle left the flagship buzzing with activity. Repairs were underway, emergency systems recalibrated, and the crew worked tirelessly to ensure that every section of the ship was secure. Kale walked through the corridors, observing the organized chaos. Every corner he passed reminded him of the courage and discipline of the alien crews, but he also noticed how they relied on his guidance, his perspective, and the decisions he had made during the attack. Humans, he realized, could leave a mark even among the most advanced civilizations. Lyra appeared beside him, her expression serene despite the lingering tension from the recent battle. "Kale," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "the Council has requested your presence. They wish to formally acknowledge your actions and decisions. You will not only be recognized for bravery, but also for the wisdom you have demonstrated." Recognition had never been his goal. All he had wanted was to protect the princess and survive the attacks. Yet here he was, about to be honored by a council representing multiple civilizations. He nodded, following Lyra through wide corridors lit with soft, golden light. The council chamber had been cleared and prepared for the ceremony. Holographic displays flickered with images of the recent battle, showing Kale's strategies, the movement of fleets, and the successful outcomes of his decisions. The council members stood in their ceremonial robes, their expressions solemn but respectful. Even the beings who had once doubted him now watched with genuine admiration. Lyra stepped forward. "Council members, today we recognize a human named Kale. Though his species is young in the galaxy, he has shown courage, intelligence, and ingenuity beyond expectation. Through his actions, he has saved countless lives and strengthened the alliances between our civilizations. His choices have proven that humans, often underestimated, can influence the fate of worlds. Today, we formally recognize you as an honorary advisor to the Council, a title rarely given to anyone outside the member species. You will have access to knowledge, resources, and counsel, not as a reward, but as acknowledgement of your contributions and potential." He had never imagined that a single act of bravery, shielding Princess Lyra from an explosion, would lead to this. He swallowed hard, finding his voice. I thank you. I don't feel worthy of such honor. I only did what I thought was right. I acted to protect lives, nothing more. Courage and integrity are rare qualities, and you possess both. The council has seen it, and so have I. The symbols were unfamiliar, but their meaning was clear: recognition, trust, and responsibility. Kale felt a warmth in his chest he had never experienced before. For the first time, he truly understood that humans, despite being often overlooked, had the capacity to make a difference on a galactic scale. His species was young, yes, but filled with courage, ingenuity, and resilience. And he, Kale, had become proof of that potential. After the ceremony, the council dismissed the attendees, leaving Kale and Lyra alone in the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the windows, and the calm of space felt like a reward after days of chaos. Kale leaned against the railing, reflecting on how far he had come, from an engineer on a routine mission to a recognized advisor among galactic royalty. "You've changed the way they see humans," Lyra said softly, standing beside him. "They no longer underestimate your species, they respect it. And you've shown them that courage and intelligence are qualities that transcend age or size of a civilization. There are challenges ahead, threats that we cannot yet foresee. But with your perspective, your mind, and your courage, we have hope. Not just for humans, but for all our civilizations." His insights were valued, his suggestions implemented, and his actions respected. He was no longer an outsider, no longer a mere human engineer. He was a trusted voice in a galaxy-wide alliance. He still found time to walk the observation decks, reflecting on Earth, on the people he had left behind, and on the humans who often doubted themselves. He realized that his courage, combined with intelligence and adaptability, had opened doors not only for himself but for his species. Humans had earned a place in galactic affairs, and he had been the first to demonstrate their worth. One evening, Lyra approached him while he watched the stars. "Kale," she said, her voice calm, "you have earned the respect of leaders and civilizations far older than your own. But more than that, you have earned my trust. You have proven that humans are capable of greatness, and I have no doubt that your influence will continue to grow. Not for recognition, not for titles, but because it is the right thing to do. Because humans, even one human, can make a difference. And never forget what humans are capable of." It was brief but filled with warmth, a reminder that even as he operated among stars and civilizations far from home, humans still had a place on their own planet. He smiled, thinking of the people he had left behind, and realized that his journey was both a personal and species-wide accomplishment. Kale's presence inspired others, humans and aliens alike. The younger members of the council began seeking his advice, curious about the perspective of someone from a species so often underestimated. He became a symbol of hope, proof that courage and intelligence could shape destinies, regardless of origin. And through it all, Kale never forgot the moment it had begun: the explosion on the station, the instinctive act of throwing himself in front of Princess Lyra to save her life. That single choice had changed everything. It had brought him among galactic royalty, earned him recognition, and demonstrated the true potential of humanity. He realized that heroism was not only about physical bravery. It was about making the right decisions, thinking creatively, and acting with integrity. It was about standing in the face of danger and uncertainty and refusing to back down. Kale had embodied these qualities, and in doing so, he had reshaped how the galaxy viewed humans. One evening, as the flagship cruised through the vastness of space, Kale stood on the observation deck with Lyra. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a tapestry of light and possibility. "Kale," Lyra said softly, "you have proven that humans are more than capable, and your journey is far from over. Together, we will face whatever the galaxy has in store. I will continue to do the same here." He had acted instinctively to protect a life, and in the process, demonstrated the power of human courage, ingenuity, and adaptability. Now, he was a recognized advisor, a symbol of hope, and proof that even one human could shape the destiny of countless civilizations. As the flagship sailed through the stars, Kale looked outward, imagining the countless worlds, civilizations, and possibilities that awaited. He knew challenges lay ahead, dangers that would test his courage and intelligence, but he also knew the truth he had discovered. Humans, underestimated though they might be, could rise to greatness in ways even the oldest and most advanced species could not predict. And Kale, the human who had shielded a princess from an explosion, would continue to prove it. The galaxy had witnessed the rise of a human hero, and it would never forget.